So now, in this session, we are going to start up with our module one. Module one. We are having three sections in this particular module one. So we are starting with the first section, which is having just two topics in that. But I do feel they are very interesting. Okay, a lot of analysis can be done on this. Something called as BJT biasing. BJT biasing. Okay, so biasing in BJT amplifier circuits. Biasing in BJT amplifier circuits. Amplifier circuits. Okay. Few sections of this you have already studied in case of your basic electronics. Okay, so we are just going to revisit the topic, but the depth what we're going to reach is something too interesting. Okay, the two topics that we're going to discuss under this module one section A is classical discrete circuit bias, and one more it is biasing using collector to base feedback resistor. Okay, so we'll start the interaction now with the first topic, that is the classical discrete classical discrete circuit bias arrangement. Circuit bias arrangement. Okay, as been referred to you, we'll be referring Sidra and Smith edition 6 in order to analyze all the topics related to this particular modules. So module 1, 2, 3 will be referring Sidra and Smith. Fine. So now, what is this term biasing? What does this mean? So we have worked on fundamentals of transistors, wherein we have understood many concepts towards the transistors. Think what's a transistor, how a transistor is going to operate, then various configurations in which transistor is going to operate, something called as common collector, common base, common emitter. Then we have identified some terms, something called as what is alpha, beta, gamma, that what's the relation between all these alpha, beta, gamma, etc, right? So they actually is giving us a very good platform, I would say, in order to start this something called a circuit bias arrangement or a voltage divider bias circuit. Okay, so before starting this topic, I can make you first understand what is our title. Okay. What's our title? So one should know prior, that is how I can make my transistor to enter into my amplifying mode, because in this case, as I said you, this is biasing BJT transistor to work like an amplifier. So as we know that, so we are having two junctions in our transistor. Let me say junction J1 and junction J2. So we know at what region of operation, and how I have to bias these two junctions. So if at all if I want to operate my transistor in the active mode, which I'm going to do it in case of amplifying operation, in order to make my transistor to work like an amplifier, okay, in order to make my transistor to work like an amplifier. So in that case, my junction J1, which is an emitter based junction, and junction J2, which is an collector based junction. So my emitter based junction has to be forward biased, and collector based junction has to be reverse biased. So this is an important point which we should infer from the fundamentals that we have already interacted. Okay. And second thing is that if at all if I want to operate my transistor into a saturation, if I want to operate my transistor into a saturation, then my emitter base junction should be forward biased, and the collector to base junction also should be forward biased. If at all if I want to operate my transistor into cutoff region, then in that case my emitter base junction should be reverse biased and collector base junction should also be reverse biased. So this is, I'm going to use it during whenever I want to use my transistor to work in the switching applications. I'm going to use it whenever I'm going to use my transistor in switching applications. So as of now, I'm not going to work upon this. It's not important for me. Important for me is just this data. That is, if at all if I want to operate my transistor into an amplifier, okay, or in an active mode, then my junction J1 has to be forward biased and junction J2 has to be reverse biased. Okay, then now we'll interact about what is the need of this biasing. What's the need of biasing? What's the need of biasing? Okay, so now we know that our transistor working like an amplifier, let me treat it as a black box. It's just a black box. Some black magic is going to occur into this black box. Now I know that if I'm going to give a weak input signal, let me say this is my input signal, the output from my amplifier will be an amplified signal. Will be an amplified signal, somewhat like this. Okay, somewhat like this. So if I compare my input signal with an output signal, I can simply say that when I compare the amplitude of my output signal with my input signal, I can say that my output signal is amplified. My output signal is amplified. Okay. Now, what is that I need to understand over here is my input signal was weak. I can simply say that the power of my input signal is less. What has made in the circuit? What has made in the circuit to develop an output signal to have a high power? What has made in a circuit to have the high power? I hope you are able to understand my statements. When I just observe my input signal, I can see that my input signal is very weak. The amplitude of the signal is less. And when I see my output signal, it is substantially having a very huge voltage, a very high voltage. Now, the question comes over here, how is my output power able to get such a high power when compared to my input power? Who is the root cause in order to boost the energy of this particular signal? Then I can say that it is just the biasing of the circuit which allows this output signal to have a high power than compared to the input power. So when I say that this term biasing, it means it is the one which is going to assist your circuit in order to provide the a good voltage swing of a high power on my output terminal. Okay. Now, normally in case of this biasing, we'll be using a DC biasing. We'll be using a DC biasing. So normally, I would like to say to people that whenever you work with your transistors, so let me say this is my NPN transistor. Okay. So let me say that this is your R1, R2, your RC, and RE. Okay. And using the fundamentals that you people have studied during your basic electronics. So this circuit is not new to you people. However, we are going to work on this something in detail. So just to make you people understand the significance of that, I'm just sharing this. So this is R1, R2, RC, and RE. Okay. So now what is that you people need to do over here is, in order to bias this particular circuit, all the base emitter junction is forward biased and collector to base junction is reverse biased. Now, if at all if I want to draw this particular circuit something separately, okay, let me show that if at all if I want to show it in an exclusive manner, okay, then I'll be having some base resistance RB, and I'll be having a voltage source which I'm going to call it as VBB. Okay, over here. Then over here I'll be having my RC, which is RE. Then I'll be having here one more voltage source, So this I'll be calling it as a VCC. Now this is these two sources what I'm using into my circuit. These two sources, they are called as biasing sources. They are called as biasing sources. So whenever I apply an input signal, whenever I apply an input signal, so it is this source which is going to give the power to this particular signal and produces an output signal of a very large voltage swing. So high power in the output signal, high power in the output signal is been I can say that I can say that the high power in the output signal is been seen because of the power what is there onto these biasing elements, onto these biasing elements. Okay. Now we need to understand two more terms before starting the classical discrete circuit bias, which is also called as a voltage divider bias. Okay, something about a Q point, something about the Q point, and a stability factor. I hope you remember my classroom session, the first class on analog circuits, wherein we have worked on how transistor works like an amplifier. So wherein I have just interacted with you for two classes talking about if at all if I take a black box wherein it's having a two-port circuit, then I have studied that whenever I apply any signal on the input side, the output will be able to have a good voltage swing along with some phase shift, along with some phase shift. Then we have talked about these two circuits, saying that how I am able to get an voltage amplification, and second thing we also talked about how we are going to get the phase shift, how we are going to get the phase shift. So at present, let us not worry about this phase shift. We should much worry about this voltage amplification. Okay, so taking it as something base, so I'm just going to talk something brief about this viewpoint and stability. So we have worked upon what is this DC load line, and how we are able to set a Q point for a given circuit. So we know that in case of the plot, in case of the plot, sorry, in case of plot between VCE versus IC, so which is nothing but an output characteristics of a transistor. So I'll be able to get somewhat the response like this. Okay, then what we have done over here is we are able to identify 2 points on this line. So whenever I want to have a point on x-axis, it means its y-coordinate is 0, and whenever I want to have any point on y-axis, its x-coordinate is 0. So we know that any point on this plane, that is VCC versus IC plane, it's a point, it's a point having the coordinates VCE comma IC. So over here, y coordinate is 0, which means it's a point on x-axis. That means I'll be having some point A over here, and similarly, any point where x-axis is 0, it means VCE is 0. It's a point on IC. So this is my point B. So when I join the straight line between the point A and B, this line is said to be a DC load line. This line is said to be as a DC load line. The characteristic curve where it intersects with the output characteristics, it defines various operating points of the circuit. For example, so here I'm having one of the output characteristics intersecting with the DC load line. So this point is an operating point. Similarly, I'm having one more characteristic which is being intersecting with the DC load line, and this point is also an operating point, and so on and so forth. I'll be having this as well as this. So which particular Q point I'm going to select? So we have interacted to a very deep extent about this topic. So we are going to select a Q point which is exactly on the center of the DC load line. Let me say this is my Q point. Just because of one simple reason, I can give a maximum voltage swing on the output side. So if at all if I select this as my Q point, if at all if I select this as my Q point, then I know that this is something my saturation point. This is something my saturation point. Okay, and this is the point where the maximum voltage can be seen. So after this I've said you beyond VCC, but if you start applying the voltage, then it may rapidly move to exponential rise of the value of I. So we are not going to go something beyond this. So it means I'm having both upper limit as well as a bottom limit. So the swing that I'm able to see onto this circuit will be somewhat like this. So this is a swing, what best I can have it. If I shift this Q point nearer to this point B, then at that time I can see that the negative swing will be vanished. Or I can say that some portion of negative swing will be clipped. If I take this point nearer to the point A, at that time some positive portion of the signal will be clipped. So if I maintain it at exactly at center, I can have a very good voltage swing of both negative as well as a positive. Okay, so it means I need to select a Q point. I need to select a Q point where Q stands for Q second point, uh, exactly at midway of the DC load line. Now, normally what happens is when I talk about something called as a stability factor, whenever I talk about something called as a stability factor, what does this mean? The term stability factor says that how best your Q point can retain its position, how best your Q point can retain its position for any change or any variations, any change or any variations which occur in your value of beta or I can say ICO or even your VBE. So these are the three parameters which can make changes in the position of your Q point. Because you know, unless and until your Q point is constant, you will never have your system being stable. So if at all if your system, your circuit has to be stable, then your Q point has to be stable. It should not move. It should not move. The moment it starts fluctuating, the moment it starts moving either towards a point B or a point a distortion in a signal is being seen. Maybe some portion of the negative swing is clipped, or maybe some portion of a positive swing is being clipped. So it means somehow I have to design my Q point such that they are insensitive. The term is very, very important. They are insensitive to the beta, ICO, and VBE. I simply mean to say I have to design my Q point such that my Q point should become independent of your beta, ICO, and VBE. However, I cannot make it something completely independent, but I can see to that a small variations in the value of beta, ICO, and VBE will not make a major difference in the value of or the position of my Q point. Okay, is it clear to you? So this is very, very important. This I can say that this is a background for my topic. So only when you know this background, you will be able to understand the what's the significance and requirement of voltage divider bias. Okay. So now we'll start our interaction with respect to the topic classical discrete circuit bias arrangement. So one thing you people should know that the classical discrete uh, circuit bias arrangement, circuit bias arrangement. This can also be called, in a simple words, as a voltage divider bias. A voltage divider bias. Now, before approaching this topic directly, that is a circuit bias arrangement or a voltage divider bias, first we'll identify the faults. First we'll identify the problems because of which we are approaching this particular topic. Then you will appreciate this concept. Okay. So, in order to bias the transistor, there are two methods. In order to bias the transistor, we are having two methods. One, it is I have to maintain voltage at base constant, VBB as constant. The second approach that I can do is I have to maintain IB constant. So these are the two approaches that they are available with me in order to operate my transistor. So now let me say that if I'm following the first approach, how will be my circuit? My circuit will be somewhat like this, wherein if this is my transistor, an NPN transistor, wherein this is my collector, this is my base, and this is my emitter. Now, in order to make a scheme wherein I'm going to bias my BJT, so I'll be having a resistance RC, okay, a resistance RC, and this emitter will be interconnected to the ground, and with respect to the base side, I'll be having a voltage divider circuit. I'll be having a voltage divider circuit. Okay, so here, so since I'll be providing a VCC at this terminal, so this is plus VCC. R1 and R2, they are I can say supporting me as a voltage divider circuit. So whatever is the voltage drop across this, whatever is the voltage drop across this element is the voltage which has been applied to your base. So if I want to identify this voltage, if at all if I want to identify this voltage, then I can simply say that VB is equals to R2 divided by R1 plus R2 into VCC. A simple voltage divider circuit, I'm simply applying the equation wherein I'm able to identify what's the voltage drop across a resistance R2. What's the voltage drop across the resistance R2? So VR2 is equals to R2 divided by R1 plus R2 into the source, because of whom the same value of I is going to flow. It's nothing but VCC. Okay. I'm simply saying to people that VR2 is equals to R2 divided by R1 plus R2 into VCC. So this equation I'm employing. Okay, so it means if I'm able to maintain somehow this voltage constant, then my transistor should be a stable circuit. My transistor should be a stable circuit. So this is one approach, but this approach is not employed. This approach is not employed. So if at all if this approach is not yet been employed, then I can think of the other parameter wherein I am going to make my IB constant. Wherein I'm going to make my IB constant. So if at all if I want to make my IB constant, then in that case my circuit, I can just represent it somewhat like this. So this is my collector, emitter, and this is the base. Okay, so here I'll be having a collector resistance RC, emitter is grounded, and I'll be having directly one resistance over here. This is called as RB, wherein once again this is being connected as plus VCC. The current that flows into the base here is IB. Wherein simply I can say the value of IB is nothing but a simple Ohm's law. VCC is being applied. So V is equals to IR. I is V by R. VCC by RB is the value of IB that is going to enter into my base. The value of IB which is going to enter into my base. Now normally even this kind of a circuit is not being employed into a practical application. Is not being employed into the practical application. So you may be feeling, so these both are the bad schemes that we are going to encounter, because of which we are moving towards a voltage divider circuit. Because of which we are moving towards a voltage divider circuit. Now question may come in you people that why we are not employing this kind of a circuit? Why we are not employing this kind of a circuit? Now let me say that in both the schemes, a small variation in VBE this potential VBE, a small variation in VBE, it makes a large variation in your VCE and hence IC, or IC hence VCE. So because your VBE is highly dependent about the value of IB, what is going to flow through this. So since IB it is being sensitive in nature, then hence it makes this complete circuit, it is completely dependent upon the drop across VBE. So no care is being taken in the circuit. No care is being taken in the circuit such that the drop or the value of I is being made independent of VBE. Independent of VBE. Hence, because of this parameter, these two circuits fail in the practical application. So we don't use these two circuits. Instead, we use an improvised version of these two circuits. We use an improvised versions of these two circuits. So in case of the improvised versions, okay, you have to concentrate very keenly. Okay, this is a very depth interaction about the topic. Okay, wherein we come up with the configuration, something called as a voltage divider circuit. A voltage divider circuit. Voltage divider circuit. Okay, wherein we'll be having. Let me say this is my transistor. Let me say this is my transistor. So I'll be having a voltage divider. Then I'll be having my resistance RC. I'll be having my resistance RC. Then I'll be having my emitter resistance RE. Okay, and this is my potential divider R1, R2. And now this is being connected to ground. So this is my collector, the base, and the emitter. So this is a transistor Q having some value beta. Now I want you people to answer me. When I compare my voltage divider bias circuit, when I compare my voltage divider bias circuit with the two configurations, that we have discussed, the two configurations that we have discussed, both the first one as well as the second one. What's the difference you're finding here? When I compare these two configurations, which I said that we are not going to implement, with respect to this voltage divider circuit, what change you are finding? Yes, good, Sneha. Yes, please answer me in the group chat. What's the change you are finding? That shows an involvement. I said you, analog circuits is not that simple. You have to involve yourself like anything. When I compare these two circuits, okay, here I'm going to maintain my VB constant, the base voltage constant, and here I'm going to maintain my IB constant. Okay, so when I said that both of these methods I'm not going to use, because a small variation in VB makes a large variation in VCE. I will be thinking, sir, if at all if large variation in VC happens, then what will be the effect of that? Then I would like to say, my dear student, if at all if your VCE is going to increase to a large extent, then I can simply say that I may not get the swing. Instead, my signal may be distorted. So this kind of a clipping can be seen onto my signal. So no doubt, I need to have an amplification, but amplification should be there within the saturation limits. Within the saturation limits. Understanding? So I cannot allow VCE to increase to any extent. So it means along with amplification, I want to have a control to what extent amplification should occur. Then it means I have to make a circuit insensitive of VBE. Yes, only 2 students are able to answer it. What about the remaining 41 attending the session? Yes, what's the change? when you compare this voltage divider circuit. Now at least you should be able to say it. What's the change? Emitter is grounded, Gunjan. This is an emitter which is being grounded over here. So when I just compare these three configurations in this voltage divider, RE is included, emitter resistance is included. So you may be feeling this emitter resistance, what it can do. You have to remember that emitter resistance is the element which acts as an element which gives negative feedback in the system, which makes the system stabilized, which makes the system stabilized. Re is the element, Re is the element which is going to give you a negative feedback in the system. I'm going to justify my statement in short interaction. Okay, you need to just remember this important this one I can say and concept wherein your emitter resistance is going to provide a negative feedback in my entire circuit. Okay, so now we'll first identify if at all if I want to apply a Thevenin equivalent on this side, that I can identify what is the equivalent resistance as such, then I can simply use my voltage divider circuit, and the same circuit I can represent over here as a transistor, my NPN transistor, okay, having just a base resistance, okay, then this is collector resistance RC, emitter resistance RE, and then this is your VCC. This is your VCC. Okay, so this is your base resistance RB, collector resistance RC, emitter resistance RE. Now I want to identify effective value of RB when I compare to this circuit. My circuit is not changed. Don't feel my circuit has got changed. This is just an equivalent circuit of this particular circuit. Okay, okay. This circuit is equivalent of this particular circuit. Now, is it possible by you people to say me what is the value of RB? What's the value of RB? Yes, what's the value of RB? My dear students, you have to be interactive. What's the value of RB? How you can define the value of RB? My RB is indicating the effective resistance what is being seen by R1 and R2. Then how is R1 R2 related to the circuit? How is R1 R2 related to the circuit? R1 by R2. They are in parallel. Good, Riker. So they are in parallel. So since they are in parallel, I can say that my RB can be just defined as R1 in parallel with R2. R1 in parallel with R2. Okay, R1 in parallel with R2. Now, if this is the case, then I can compute what is my VBB now. I can compute what is my VBB. Now I can define my VBB, the base bias voltage, VBB, as once again the same equation. So I want what's the potential across the base, potential at base with respect to ground, potential at base with respect to ground. This is what I'm calling it as base bias voltage. So VBB is given by R2 divided by R1 plus R2 into VCC. Is it clear to you? Then what is this base resistance RB? Then I can simply say that my base resistance RB will be equal to, since R1 is in parallel with R2, I can write this as R1 into R2 divided by R1 plus R2. R1 into R2 divided by R1 plus R2. Is it clear to you? Now, a very important thing that I want you people to understand, because in most of the circuits, you may not find a circuit somewhat like this. Okay, So what's that uh, term that you people are the uh, understanding that you people to have over here is that now when I draw a circuit somewhat like this, a transistor, okay, let me say that this is my transistor, okay, so this is a collector, emitter, and the base. So I have represented my resistance RB, RC, okay, so this is my VCC, RB, RC, and this is my RE. Okay, so now the same circuit, I want to represent for you people how you people understand it in a very simple manner. So let me say that this is my transistor, my RC, RE, and RB. Okay, now I'm going to split this source. I'm going to split this source. I know that my transistor is going to operate into an active mode. So if at all if my transistor has to operate in my active mode, emitter base junction has to be forward biased and collector base junction has to be reverse biased. So in order to make my emitter base junction forward biased, emitter base junction, for example, this one. So in order to make it forward biased, so that it's an NPN transistor, NPN transistor. So this is P side. So what I'm going to do, I need to connect a positive polarity, okay, and this has to be defined with respect to the ground. So negative will be on this side. Understanding? The positive polarity is connected to the base. I hope you're able to understand it now. Second thing, second thing. Now I want to make collector to base junction as reverse biased. So this is my collector, which is the negative side. So this has to be connected to the positive. And the other end should be connected to the negative. So this is how is the circuit. So what circuit you are writing over here like this, a same is being represented here. So you are familiar about this circuit in your basic electronics, but now you people should have a resonance of understanding this kind of a circuit which represents the same circuit. Sometimes I'll be showing this particular source separated